Today on the Audible, we are talking all things sports. We will look at Austin Peay highlights, predictions, and more. We'll also preview the Titans' Week 2 matchup against Jacksonville, and we'll also talk about Alec Mills and his career day.
Everybody, and thanks for tuning into the Audible. I'm Isabella Christensen alongside my co-host Patton Cook. We'll jump right in and take a look at our first segment where you will see highlights from Austin Peay versus Pittsburgh. Now, this matchup was played at Heinz Field, a place that gave these guys a look at where they ultimately want to be one day, and Pittsburgh overall handled that really well. They showed out, especially when it came to throwing the ball.
Absolutely, a cool moment for a lot of these guys because this is the end goal, ultimately playing in a lot of these NFL stadiums. But for Pittsburgh, really coming into the game, the question was, will they be ready? This is their first game. Austin Peay had a chance to play against Central Arkansas 2 weeks prior, so they kind of had some game footage already. But for Pittsburgh, they didn't really skip a beat. The quarterback, Kenny Pickett, our player to watch last week, he did not disappoint, had 277 yards passing and 1 touchdown through the air and on the ground. And he's really efficient, didn't give that Austin Peay defense any turnovers at all. And really that offense, it was led by him. Didn't have many rushing by one specific guy for Pittsburgh at all. It was really the passing game. But really the offense, they scored touchdowns on their first 6 possessions. They did not skip a beat at all in this game. But for Paris Ford, another player to watch he had the early interception against Jeremiah Oatsfall. He had that in the first possession of the game, and he really just grew into the game on the tackling front for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I mean, they really did find their momentum that game. Now, Austin Peay had a chance to work with some of their guys in this game that were out for the last, and I think that they still were just kind of working through the kinks of that, as well as getting used to the new head coach this season.
Absolutely, and that's got to be really preferenced when watching this Austin Peay team. This is a team that is missing some key guys from last year, specifically on that offensive line. They're really having to work through some adjustments, specifically on the offensive line, as I mentioned. And that's really going to affect Jeremiah Oatsfall. This is his second game back between a long injury that he faced last season against Central Arkansas. So he's really dealing with some problems on the wide receiver front. D'Angelo Wilson in this game didn't have a great game, only had 3 catches. So they're definitely going to want him to be more involved in their games, especially against opponents like Pittsburgh. And for Austin Peay, the defense just really struggled in this game. They could never get off the field on third down. Pittsburgh was excellent. They barely didn't convert any third downs. They converted 7 of 14 on the third down marker. And for Austin Peay, they lost the turnover battle. And for a team like Pittsburgh, you're going to need to force turnovers, and you're going to have to keep care of the ball. They lost the turnover battle 3-0 in this game. So a real struggle for Austin Peay. But like we're saying, this is really just a warm-up for the OVC play. They've got 1 game remaining against Cincinnati that we'll talk about a little later on, but this is the warm-up for the games coming up. So although the score doesn't show it, there's some positives to take out of this, and I think the defense, even though the points they gave up, I thought they showed some pretty bright spots in this game. Well, after a tough loss for the Governors, let's now hear from the head coach and also some players on their thoughts about the upcoming game, the past game against Pittsburgh.
We came out today, we asked our kids to go compete against a really, really formidable opponent. And I thought, we got out to the best first play we could. We got a D-low for maybe 7 or 8 yards. And then we come and then we get a momentum changing play on third down, instead of just throwing the ball away. And they pick us off there, and the momentum swing. They just go right down the field on us, and a lot of it's just getting tackled and getting aligned. Like we didn't give ourselves a chance, just not getting aligned tonight properly, and so we got to get that corrected as coaches. That's on us to get that corrected.
I don't think we responded very well. I think the kids, that was the most missed assignments we had as a defense probably since Coach Bo and I got here, just overall. It's not our standard at all. Coach Bo will talk more about it. But for us, that was not our standard of play. I mean, if you have guys running around in the box, not getting lined up, you have no shot. I mean, you just don't have a chance. So we had to get guys cleats in the ground, And I think we had some young guys get some snaps early, and they were a little bit googly-eyed. And then once we settled in the second half, I mean, minus 2 short fields, we played really, really well in the second half. So I think that we got to kind of build on the second half momentum going into Cincinnati and be like, hey, it's still 11-on-11 football. Just settle in, get your cleats in the ground, read your keys, trust what your eyes are telling you, and then be able to go play football. And that's kind of what we're going to have to do.
First of all, we got some really tough kids and good players, right? We know that. Pittsburgh, hats off to Coach Narduzzi and his staff, really good football team. But kind of like Coach Powell was talking about, it doesn't matter if we playing Clarksville middle if the guys running wide open, we can't get lined up. So that had nothing to do with Power 5, FCS, or anything like that. I tell my guys all the time in the room, let's make them shoot layups, not half-court shots, right? I can make 100 layups. But they beat us, make them shoot from half-court, just make them earn it. And we didn't do that. Like Coach Powell said, it's the most missed assignments that we had all season in 2 years. So we've been here, and that's on me and Coach Powell. That's not the kids. That's not Power 5. Now, if a guy's bigger than you, is faster than you, and just he makes a play, I mean, that's cool. But we had guys out of gaps and guys running wide open. And I can guarantee you this, right? I can guarantee this. Put my celly on it. Versus Cincinnati, that won't happen.
And so, we really challenge the kids in the second half just to play 5 minutes at a time. And I really thought it showed, the character of our young men in the second half of how they came out and attacked it in terms of from a mindset and from a standpoint of the character that we have in our locker room. And while things didn't go, the way we drew them up or the way they went, our kids did play with effort and they did not stop until the final, whistle kind of blew. And the positive note is that they kept trying and that, I told them that the sun does rise on Sunday and God willing, it sure did. And so, we're excited for this week and what that brings. And, we just gave us time, on that plane ride back to kind of self-reflect and look at ourselves. And so that's what we did, yesterday. And by far in the 2 years I've been here, we really flew around last night and the guys really responded with a great Sunday practice. We call it driver's side Sundays, where we kind of look in the rearview mirror, but we also look through, what's ahead of.
When we come back, you will get an in-depth preview of the Governor's upcoming game against Cincinnati. You're watching The Audible here on APSU-TV.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made home ownership happen. Homeschooling yourself on loans, beefing up your credit score.
So I'm pre-approved.
You were like, yes! Sorry. Color coding listings, ticking boxes, and flushing every toilet in a 20-mile radius. Home sweet home. You aced house hunting. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
Welcome back to the Audible. Let's take a look at the Govs preparing for their matchup against Cincinnati this coming weekend.
Last Saturday was a tough one for the Austin Peay Governors. Facing down an upper division opponent in Pitt, the Govs fell 55-0 to the ACC team. Pittsburgh quarterback Kenny Pickett had a field day with the Govs, throwing for 277 yards and one score while rushing for another. With one game left remaining on the 2020 slate for Austin Peay, it's all or nothing going into a clash with FBS-ranked Cincinnati on Saturday. The Govs have struggled at times through the first two games on offense and are looking to put together a solid overall performance against the Bearcats of Cincinnati. For Cincinnati, this will be their first contest since January 2nd, when they soundly defeated Boston College in the Birmingham Bowl 38-6. Cincinnati has been among the class of the American Athletic Conference for a few seasons now, and they should look to continue that form. However, for Austin Peay, it's time to regroup and figure out what you've been doing well and what you have not been doing well. Despite the numbers for Pittsburgh this past weekend, the secondary led by FCS All-American Cordell Jackson has been as good as advertised, even holding the talented passing attack of Central Arkansas quiet for 3 quarters and 12 minutes. The offense, however, has been a bit of a struggle and hopes to bounce back against a Bearcat team that held the Eagles of Boston College to less than 170 total yards on January 2nd. Redshirt junior quarterback Jeremiah Oatsfall hasn't quite been himself through these 2 games, completing less than 50% of his passes in both. That being said, Jeremiah is a game winner and put the Govs up on Central Arkansas with less than 2 minutes remaining just a few weeks ago with a rushing score. While I was unable to interview any players or coaches, I can attest that the air at practice was not doom and gloom. Rather, it was an air of excitement. This team is getting to go play football again one more time this year, in a time where we weren't really sure if there was going to be any football games on Saturdays. This team knows that they're much better than what they showed at Heinz Field on Saturday, and they are ready for one more chance to go out and prove it. Although there were no games being held there this year, Forterra Stadium is still alive on weekday afternoons with the sounds of pads popping, big plays happening, and guys getting to do what they love. It's not quite the same with little or no fans, but considering where we were in March, this seems like a dream. Even in a COVID-shortened season, one thing is for sure. The Austin Peay Governors, led by Coach Marcus Lovings, will be ready to compete at a high level on Saturday and give the Cincinnati Bearcats a difficult time should they begin to look to the future too soon. The Govs historically have played Cincinnati close, with their last meeting being decided by a single score. What awaits on this Saturday should be an entertaining contest and hopefully one the Governors can build off of going into the Ohio Valley Conference's spring football schedule. The game will take place at 11 a.m. Central Time on Saturday morning, and you can stream it live on ESPN+.
Now that we had a look at what the Govs were up to in practice, let's now listen to what the 2 coaches from Austin Peay and Cincinnati had to say.
We had a really, really good, really infectious, really enthusiastic Sunday practice for a Cincinnati team that doesn't need anybody's help. You know, coming from off a 11-win season, they go and they beat a Boston College team, which is the ACC team, which is in the same conference as Pitt, and they beat them for a bowl game. So we understand, you know, what we're going up against and what we're facing. We really do. They're a very multiple team, a team that Coach Freeman does a good job. They're very sound in what they do. They play extraordinarily fast up front. I think they got very quick twitch defensive linemen that really create havoc. And they like to bring, you know, pressure every now and then on third down. They like to get, you know, creative in what they do, but they're going to play cover one and be in your face and make you complete balls as far as stuff that goes. So defense is really sound, very multiple, like I said before. We got a work cut out for us again on offense, moving the ball against the #1 scoring defense in the AAC. I think their quarterback, Ritter, does a heck of a job, both run and pass. This team plays with a chip on their shoulder. You see, you know, why they are successful because of how and the way they play the game. Very enthusiastic team that plays it, you know, how football should be played the right way. My hat's off to Luke Fickle for the program he's built there. And we look forward to the challenge on Saturday.
More than anything, I think you're looking at a team that this is their last game. And I think our guys got to make sure they understand that this is, you know, this is kind of their season. They have a 3-game season, and, you know, they're going to come in with nothing holding back. And, you know, they have athletes, they have players. They're going to give us a test in many different ways. But what it really comes down to is us, and us focusing on ourselves, us focusing on the things that we need to do and what we need to control, and not as much about who they are. Doesn't mean we aren't studying, doesn't mean we don't know exactly what they do out of what formation and what defense and things like that. But always in week one, and it's our week one, you got to really focus on yourself.
Now that we've heard from the coaches, let's look into some keys to the game for these two teams going into this matchup. Now, for Austin Peay, I would say that's just going to have to be to survive against another big team.
Absolutely, and this is a game that ultimately it's going to be very slim chances for them to win this game. This is a Cincinnati team who is really, really good. They're ranked 13th in the nation right now, and they really did a good job against Memphis last year in the title game. So, and another thing for Austin Peay, I think, is going to be to move the chains. They really struggled to give their defense a blow on the sideline just to get some rest in, because ultimately this Cincinnati offense is going to get their yards and they're going to get their possession. So it's really on to this Austin Peay offense to give their defense a chance to kind of rest up on the sideline, because I think they're going to really need all their energy today.
Now for Cincinnati, it's a first game for the season for them, and so I think that they're just going to have to work through the kinks of that after the longer off season and really find the momentum for this game.
Yeah, kind of the same key we had for Pittsburgh last season against Austin Peay, and this is a team in Cincinnati that's got a lot of expectations. As I mentioned, they're 13th in the nation right now, and they've got expectations that they don't usually have, because as I said, they're ranked and they're usually not up there in the rankings this early on in the season. So they've got expectations to do well. And especially what Pittsburgh did to this team in Austin Peay last week, I think they're going to want to do at least that to kind of keep their momentum going towards a tough schedule coming up.
Absolutely, and then some players to watch in these games. For Austin Peay, you have Josephus Smith, and a big guy who's going to be a crucial player in a game like this going up against a bigger team. Absolutely,
and last week was his first game of the season, and you really couldn't tell it. He ended up with 5 tackles on the game and had a strip sack against Kenny Pickett for Pittsburgh, and that's a good offensive line up there for Pittsburgh. So I like his chances on having another good game today. And this is his senior season. And ultimately, playing in Heinz Field is kind of where he wants to be. He wants to be on that NFL stage. So performing against a team like Cincinnati, it'll be great film work for the NFL scouts coming up in April.
D'Angelo Wilson is another guy to really look out for. He really showed out for the Govs last season. He didn't get a chance to play in the first game this season, but last week I think he struggled a little bit, and he's still working through the kinks of getting his momentum as well, but he's going to be a guy to keep an eye on for sure.
Absolutely, and this is another guy who is a senior for this Austin Peay team, and he had a great breakout season last year, over 1,000 yards coming off an OVC championship for the Govs. This is another guy who's got expectations at playing at the next level, and just like Josephus, this is a higher competition than really what he's used to playing in the OVC, so this is going to be a big game for him to want to impress for his team, but really give Jeremiah Oatsfall a target. This is a guy who's really struggling for confidence and for rhythm right now coming off an injury, so what Oatsfall need is a guy like D'Angelo Wilson who can get open quickly, but I have a pretty good feeling Cincinnati's going to want to double D'Angelo and make someone else beat them like Benico Harley.
And then I think looking at Pittsburgh, you've got 2 guys to really keep an eye on. You have 2 juniors, Javon Hicks and Desmond Ritter, and they're just 2 great guys that are going to be a strong suit for them.
Absolutely. The quarterback for Cincinnati, this is a guy who Austin Peay is going to really have to focus in on. A guy in Kenny Pickett that they played last week was more of a guy who's just going to stand in the pocket and kind of deliver passes in the pocket. He's not going to escape, but for Ryder, that's the complete opposite. He loves to get out on the perimeter, stretch the defense out, and really cause havoc against that secondary and forcing them to cover their receivers in longer than they would have expected. He had 21 yards and also 600 rushing yards last season with a combined 23 touchdowns both through the air and on the ground. But he is known to kind of give up an interception. So that is a big player I'm looking forward to in today's game. Coming up after the break, we'll dive into some Titans football and discuss their matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday. You're watching The Audible on APSU-TV.
Touchdown! Oh, did you see that? Whoa, we scored? Yeah, we scored. We're going to the playoffs. I can't believe I missed that. Every time I'm buzzed, I spend too much time on my phone. What? I should take your phone away. No. I'll call for a ride. Hey, why does my face look like that?
I'm playing with these new face filters.
Okay, you know what? Yep, that's mine.
I'm gonna need that back.
No. Kevin!
I was physically at school, but my mind wasn't at school. I had problems at home. That's when I met Narnese. She started helping me a little bit, like, Nia, I don't know what you're doing, but your future is more important. She's my strength. It takes a village to help somebody get their diploma. It changes your whole life.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your closet. Still no jobs? Just more stuff? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed. And they're the stuff inside your stuff. Our job is to unlock those jobs. And it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover keytar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Or maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all, if I could go back, I would. But I can't.
Welcome back to the Audible. I had the wonderful opportunity to sit down with Jim Wyatt to ask him about Ryan Tannehill and how also COVID-19 has altered his covering of the games for the Titans this season.
And so when the move was made, I think a lot of people were skeptical, not necessarily inside the building, but certainly the fan base, I think, was skeptical about how things might work out. I think players were thinking, okay, we're going to a guy who's very capable. You know, what I saw from Tannehill, you know, from that moment on, he went from being a guy who really deferred to Marcus, who kind of, you know, sat back and observed, didn't really speak up a lot, to all of a sudden being a guy who was in command and took ownership of the offense and really took ownership of, you know, as a leader of the football teams and of the team, and guys rallied around him. And then he started to have some success. He showed a little moxie in doing it. I mean, he made some big throws, he made some big runs, he took some big hits along the way, showed his toughness, and you know, and guys bought in. I mean, you know, players want to win, and you got to put feelings aside. And as much as people respected Marcus, you know, the respect for Ryan Tannehill grew very quickly. And you know, for him to guide the team into the postseason, and then for the Titans to kind of get on the roll that they did. Obviously, Derrick Henry had a lot to do with that. Obviously, defense and some other guys had a lot to do with it. But Ryan Tannehill was a big part of it. And I think that's got to give you a reason for optimism moving forward. You know, my job, you know, covering games this season is going to be completely different at home and on the road. You know, since I started working with the Titans, you know, since 2015, I've been traveling with the team. You know, that entails leaving the day before the game, you know, getting on the plane, flying with the players. You know, I've had players beside me, to me, a lot of these flights. You go to the hotel. You go in the buses with these guys, you cover the games, and then you're flying out the night of the game, and everything's quick. And now I envision that I'm going to be flying, taking commercial flights this year. And I think that's going to be because the number one priority is to keep these players safe and to limit their exposure to as few people as possible. And the reality is I'm better off flying commercial this year. From a health standpoint, obviously you're taking more risk when you're getting on a commercial flight as opposed to being on a plane where you know everybody's tested, where you know no one has a virus. But you know, I think covering games now, because everything's going to be done virtually, you know, if I was traveling with the team this year, I'd have a hard time doing my job. Obviously, I'd cover the game, I'd write my game stories, but life working for the team. Once that game ends, you're packing your bags, you're heading down for interviews, and then you're getting, interviews and headed for the bus and then trying to take a flight out. Now I'm going to need to be in a press box where I can get on Zoom calls and I wouldn't do these Zoom calls as easily if I'm kind of on the go and taking buses and trying to board a plane. So many different parts of the job are going to be completely different, and it's going to be an adjustment for everybody. And it's going to be weird, going to games without fans in the stands.
NFL Sunday means Jaguars at Titans and Chiefs at Chargers. Patton, let's talk predictions for these two. You've got your Titans winning it 30-10, hopefully coming back with a stronger kicker this week.
Well, he is still on the roster as of right now, unfortunately, and Steven Gostkowski, he's a Hall of Famer, but last week he was not a Hall of Famer. Coming into that game on Monday night, he was 6th all-time in kicking percentage of all NFL kickers. By the end of the night, he was 9th. So that kind of just shows the struggle he had. He ended up pulling through for the Titans, but here against the Jags, this is a weaker team compared to the Denver Broncos. At home as well, a limited number of fans will be at Nissan Stadium this Sunday, so I'm really looking forward to this game and really to kind of put a bright spot on this season, because last week was ugly. It hurt my heart. It hurt me watching. But for the Titans, I've got them winning this one 30-10. We talked about one AFC Championship team from last season. I guess we can talk about another one. Your Kansas City Chiefs, a pretty good football team. Are they going to win this week?
I mean, you hope so. I want to say that I think so. I mean, they're a strong team. They're coming back confident, obviously, off of a Super Bowl win from last season, and they've got their quarterback locked in for quite a while. And just that supportive foundation overall as a team. So we'll see if Sunday they get a chance to show out all these things again.
For our final topic on today's show, let's look at more of a local story, and that is the Alec Mills and his career game that he had against the Brewers. Isabella, what did you make of this really cool local story?
Well, you've got a Clarksville native. I mean, Montgomery Central High School and everything. So he was a walk-on at UT Martin here in Tennessee, and he's still involved in the community. In the last few years, I know that he's come to speak at a high school banquet, so he's around, and it was just really cool to see a hometown guy like that do something so big. I mean, it got him National League Player of the Week. He wasn't even supposed to be in there, but once you go through that lineup, and he got a chance, and he pulled through.
Absolutely, and the Chicago Cubs pretty much needed every bit of that win against the Brewers. Right now, they're 5 games ahead of the St. Louis Cardinals in their division in the National League. So it was a great win for them.
From Patton and I, we want to thank you for tuning into The Audible. Stay tuned weekly for all things Austin Peay, NFL, and more. We will see you next week.